environments. I hope that you could tell that as I was talking about it from a biblical, philosophical perspective, that I'm very passionate about environments. Um, from the time I was doing campus ministry to the time that I was running their conference, I've always been passionate about creating, from the front door experience for people. And it's always been creating the environment has always been a big part about that. Now with kids ministry, environment is probably even more important than it was as a campus ministry, as a conference, just because, kids are so affected by what they see and what they do. And so it's just so important that we hit a home run on environments. And so I'm going to kind of, and I hate to even tell you this, kind of wing it, but just kind of walk you through my process of how I think through and plan environments. And I'll hopefully remember to tell you where you need to seek input from your team. Because here's the deal. You guys are part of this internship program because some of you will actually be kid life pastors down the road, and you'll actually be working with a team. And so a lot of the times, these are going to be things that you can think about, things that you need to think through. Maybe it's not in kid life. Maybe you'll be the children's pastor of other churches. We've already begun to launch out folks from our fold that have really started taking on leadership roles at other churches. And so let's just talk through this a little bit. So the first thing that you're going to start with is you already know your theme. You probably already know your topics because that comes first is you kind of figure out the direction that you're going curriculum-wise. So for instance, let's just use it because it's coming up next that we have a Hollywood theme coming up. Okay, so the Hollywood theme, here's some of the things you need to kind of do. You need to kind of figure out the different areas that you've got to create. So for instance, for us here at Little Rock, we've got a nice division by a door that separates them. We've got our auditorium area where we've got a stage and then where all the kids sit. Okay, and that's kind of one area all by itself. And so we kind of think about the stage separately. And then on the outside of that door, we've got our hallway, this long, narrow section that we have to think through that we have to figure out what to do. Okay, so here's what we do is now we start thinking about that theme and just brainstorming ideas. Now, especially during the brainstorm section, you want to have as many minds working as possible because you never know who's going to come up with that nugget. You never know who's going to come up with that idea that makes your environment. It may not be you. Chances are it's not going to be you. But somebody who's part of your team will be sitting at that table and they'll have the idea that just blows you away. That sets off that, you're like, we need to do that. That's where we need to go. And so especially at the brainstorming section, you need to have as many people at the table as you can so that you get as many ideas as you can. You need to communicate to them that although there are bad ideas, we're not going to tell you right now. We're just going to brainstorm ideas. Let's not worry about budget. Let's not worry about can we actually pull it off. Let's just come up with as many ideas as we can about the environment. So the first thing we're going to do is we're just going to brainstorm ideas. And we're probably going to start thinking separately about the different environments. So for instance, Heber Springs, it's one room. There is no separate environment. It is all one room. Hot Springs, right now you guys are in a gym. By the end of the year, we will change that and we will get you into a new environment that will have some definition and some change. But even in that gym, Atticus, be thinking about this because you've got kind of the tables that you've set aside where there's crafts and drawing and things like that. You've got where the carpet ball table is, and then you've got kind of where the action happens on the stage. So even though it's one big area, there are still kind of separate areas that you can divide out and think about separately and figure out how you want to do it. Okay? Cabot, you're one big room as well. And so, but even in that area, you've got your video game wall, you've got your stage, which is clearly defined, and then you've got kind of this wide open area. And so thinking through and kind of figuring out, do we want to handle them together or do we want to separate them and really think through them? And so once we kind of have got these environments kind of nailed out and we have the theme in mind, brainstorm. Brainstorm, brainstorm, brainstorm. What ideas? We need to come up with as many ideas as possible. We'll go back and evaluate the ideas, but first, we just want idea creation. Just what can we do? Let's not settle on it. If we have a great idea, let's mark it with an X, but keep going. Let's keep coming up. More ideas. Because you never know. It may be the third or fourth good, maybe after 3 or 4 good ideas that you find the great idea. Here's a story. There was a graphic designer, I forget what his name was. But he's very famous, and he's famous because of a creation of his. And New York kind of tapped him and said, okay, we want you to build this image. We want you to play with the type. They really didn't give him much. All they knew was, we wanted to say, I love New York. Okay, I love New York. And so he played with different combinations. He worked it forwards and backwards. He had 3 or 4 good options, but it just didn't settle right in his spirit. He just didn't think that he nailed it. It wasn't quite there. And so, he even met with the board that had commissioned this work, and he said, hey, here's the ideas that I've got. And they're like, man, we love them. Let's go with it. He goes, well, can I have just a couple more weeks? I'm just not quite settled on this. This doesn't quite feel right. And so he kept working, kept playing with new fonts, kept playing with different items and different icons, and finally landed on one of the most iconic just graphic design pieces of all time. And it's the I Heart NY. And so again, that he already had good ideas, but he just wasn't content with it. He didn't think he had quite landed on it, and so he kept working. And that's when he found the great idea. And so when we're talking about environments in the brainstorm section, just keep thinking. Eventually, though, you're going to have to move on. But you want to collect as many ideas as you can before you move on. Thinking outside the box, not letting there be any limits as far as budget, not letting there be any limits as far as finding the people who can actually do these things. Just come up with the great ideas, and then you can start to refine and evaluate. Because after you brainstorm, then you're going to refine. Okay? And that's when you're going to start picking the ideas. Now here's a few things that you're going to want to think through. The more immersive it is, the better. But again, there are limitations as far as budget, as far as time, as far as the ability to pull it off. But again, the more immersive that it is, and that means, again, from the front door all the way through, the more you carry a theme all the way through, the more you cover up what already exists and replace it with something new, the more immersive it is, the more impact it's going to have on the kids, the more it's going to draw them into the theme. And so as we think about Hollywood, literally, what can we do to the walls? What can we do to the ceiling? What can we do to the floors? Because the more immersive that we can make it, the more involved it is. So immersive is a good word to think about as you're dreaming up environments. The other thing you're going to want to think about is interactive. I had a moment of discouragement a while back because, again, I love environments. I love creating new things. And one of the things that I realized is we spend a lot of time on our stage making it cool. We even built one time this general store. We literally built like this metal framing, and right now I'm going to pop a picture in there for you so you can see it. But it was amazing. For Jonah's Corner, we set up an actual general store. The screen door worked. You could go in and out of it. It was amazing. And here's the thing that I noticed. The kids weren't impressed. I was amazed at this. The kids were not impressed. I think they noticed, and I think that having something that's cool to look at is nice, but here's what I also noticed. We did a series a while back, and it was called Tin Hut, and it was military themed. And so we set up two places. We set up a target range, a Nerf gun target range, and it was just boxes and like targets slapped on the boxes. I mean, it was really easy to make. It cost nothing. And then in the auditorium, we set up an obstacle course. Man, they loved it. I mean, loved it. Like, they loved coming to church. Not because it looked cool, but because they got to do something. You see what I'm saying? So, interactive. We want to think through, man, what do they get to do this series that they don't get to do other times? Because if we can figure that out, if we can find that, and it's something that they get to do, what they do means more to them than what they see at this age. I mean, yeah, they'll notice it and they'll see it and like, oh, that's cool. But what they get to do is the thing that really hits them. So, again, what do they get to throw? What do they get to make? What do they get to draw? What do they get to do? These are questions that you want to ask during the brainstorming session, but you really want to lean towards as you refine the ideas. Pick ideas that involve them. Okay? So with Hollywood, we're going to be thinking about this theme, what we're doing. What do they get to do? What's the interactive piece in your environment? Because there needs to be at least one. You know, we've been working together long enough that you all remember Crazy Random, where we set up the spinners, where they got to have a crazy random experience just by spinning these wheels that landed on who knew what, and then they had to do it. So again, you can kind of see as we've thought about this, what are the elements that are going to be interactive? Be ready on Saturday because you all are going to have to come up with that. You all are going to have to really think through, how do we make this immersive? How do we make this interactive? Okay, so as you're also thinking about it, know this as well. Colorful is better. I'm kind of a design Nazi. I'm just going to tell you that. It's hard for me to break out of one font for a series, one background for a series. Now I'll change the color of the background, but I really like things clean and neat, and it's hard for me to sometimes break from that. And so one time I was preparing the design of a series, and there were some kids running around the church, and I said, guys, come here. I've got 3 options for you. And one was awesome. I mean, it was so cool. It had the sky, and it was like real clean and just looked good. The other one was just a bunch of puzzle pieces, but they were really colorful. And honestly, it kind of irked me. I really didn't like it, but I'd made it, so I was going to throw it out there for them, thinking that they were going to pick the clean design. What I discovered was every kid, like without exception, without fail, every kid picked the colorful one, picked the puzzle pieces. Even though it didn't look clean, even though it bothered me because it was so messy. And I asked them, why? Why do you like that one? Why do you like that one? And they said, because it's colorful. And so that's another thing that we're learning about environments is, man, that they love color. That if you're going to stray towards bright colors, stray towards lots of colors. Don't be afraid. Now, there are some color rules that you probably need to follow and not have lots of clashing colors or opposite colors. But again, color. They love color. So whether you're doing your color through lights, or whether you're doing it through paint or through objects, through fabric, whatever it is, kids love color. And they're drawn to colorful places and objects. And so as we think about environments, man, we need to be thinking about what colors are we going to use and how much and how are we going to get them all over the place. Because again, kids love color. Okay? So again, immersive, interactive, colorful. These are ideas that we need to be thinking about. Another thing that we need to think about as far as environments go, as far as refining the idea, is what are we going to, our volunteers, our leaders, are they going to be absorbed into the theme as well? We've kind of gotten away from this somewhat in Little Rock, not because it's not a good idea, but just because we've gotten lazy. I'm just going to confess that to you. We've gotten away from it because we've gotten lazy. But when you involve your volunteers as characters in the grand play, then all of a sudden, man, it's more immersive. Also, it's more interactive because now the kids get to interact with the environment because your volunteers are part of the environment. So again, as we think about this theme, Hollywood, is there a role, or roles plural, that the volunteers can play in the midst of this environment change, in the midst of this series? Are there roles the volunteers can play? So now they're not just Kid Life volunteers, but they are blank. And fill in the blank. They're not just blank. You got it? So again, volunteers, what characters can they play? Think about that, because again, just like in the tabernacle, the priest was part of the environment. In Kid Life, your leaders and volunteers are also part of that environment. Something else to think about is your MCs and your stage folks. Again, do they play the same role? Do they play a different role? What roles are they in the midst of this? As they're leading and guiding the service that's happening from the stage, what role are they playing? Who are they? Another thing to consider, another thing to think through. Got it? All right, from there, so we're brainstorming ideas, we're refining ideas, we're then picking the ones that we can actually pull off. We're refining them on the basis of budget. We're refining them upon the basis of who can we find to do this. Because, man, we had talked about Hollywood. We've already talked about this series a little bit. We talked about building a giant Oscar, but really we don't have anyone who's got that skill set. So who knows what we're going to do. But we're probably not going to build a giant Oscar because nobody can mold styrofoam like we need them to. But again, so budget, skill set, time. Guys, you all are working with Kid Life pastors. The majority of them are bivocational. They do 2 jobs. And Kid Life is something they're not getting paid a lot for. And so there's not a lot of time. And also time being the man hours you can pull together, volunteer man hours, those types of things. So again, you're going to refine the ideas based upon what's best, but also what you can pull off. And sometimes, if you can focus on a small area, like really doing your stage well, it'll draw them in during the service, and you don't have to spend as much time on the outlying areas. But if you decide, again, immersive is always best, but also we want to understand and do it in a way that we can with the time, money, and resources available to us. So that's one way to refine it. Okay, so once we've refined the idea, now it comes time to implement it. And implement means to make it happen. So again, we've brainstormed, we've come up with all kinds of ideas. Then we've refined it. Okay, we've decided what ideas are best. And now we're going to implement it. We're going to put them into practice. So the first thing that I do is I do a sketch. And what I mean by that is I'll actually take a picture of the environment. I'll take a picture of our hallway. I'll take a picture of our auditorium, and especially our stage. And then I will draw on the top of it, whether it be with a Sharpie on the paper or with an app or a computer program like I use Penultimate. Because Penultimate is just a notebook program that I can then pull up, drop a picture of the environment, and then draw on top of it with different colors. And so I'll show you a couple of examples so you can see what they look like, but then I'll draw it on top because this gives me a visual understanding of what it's going to look like when it's done. And I especially love that picture that's from the entrance point. This picture right here of the hallway is from the entrance point so that I get an idea of parents, what they're going to see as they're dropping their kids off, what the kids are going to see as they're entering the environment. Because remember, God is concerned about the experience from the front door forward. And so I want to make sure that front door experience is the best that it can be. Got it? So I'm going to draw some of those sketches and environments. I'm also going to draw diagrams to show where different things go. One, it helps me to understand that, but also it helps our team to make it happen. Because what you're going to see is that you can't implement alone. And if you do implement alone, time of confession, There have been a couple of environments that I pretty much did by myself, and they stunk. They stunk because they weren't big enough. They stunk because they weren't immersive enough. They stunk because it was just my limited ideas. And so I've always had a better return working with a team than I have doing it myself. And so again, if that's the case and you want to multiply your man hours by involving as many people as possible, you need these communication pieces, these sketches. And then something else that you're going to want to do is you're going to schedule a work day. A day where everybody comes together and works. Guys, I got to tell you, there is nothing that builds a team better than having a big goal. Guys, we want to totally change this environment. You have a big goal, and then you pull it off together. Okay? There is nothing that brings a team together than knowing we did this and we did it together. And so that's one of the huge advantages of doing environments like this, is that it brings your team together. Okay, so we're going to have sketches so that people can begin to see and visualize what we're doing. And then the next thing that I do is I create a task list. Okay, so I look at our current environment and I decide, okay, we need to get rid of these things and we need to replace them with these things. So tear down. What are the things that need to come down from the previous series? And then I just write it out. In our auditorium and in our hallway, I separate those two out because there's two separate environments for us. For you, you may just make one list. But so these are all the things that need to come down. If you haven't been doing much with environments, chances are nothing needs to come down. But then I start thinking through what are the individual tasks that are going to transform the environment from environment, well, now it's X because we've removed everything. What are the things that I need to build into the environment to make it this thing? What do we need to build? What do we need to hang? What do we need to change about the lighting? What do we need? All these things, what do we need to change about the environment? And then I just make a huge task list. And the reason I do that is because, when we start getting to work during a set change and during, switching environments, and we may have 20 to 40 people involved, and they're all coming to me to figure out what to do. And so I don't ever want people to not know what to do because that's frustrating. You want to help, you want to move the progress forward, but you don't know what to do. And so that's why I create these lists so that everybody knows everything that we're going to finish, everything that we're going to try to get done to make the environment happen. And so, so those are the things that we're going to do. And so then people can kind of pick their tasks and work on them together. And then by doing that, we get done a lot quicker. When I do large group work things, I'm shooting for 2 to 4 hours. I don't want people to be there all day because they don't want to be there all day. And so if we can get a lot done in 2 to 4 hours, what's going to happen is they're going to look forward to the next one because they know that they did something significant in a short amount of time. And so that's something to think about. How many people can you get there, and what can you accomplish in 2 to 4 hours together? Because that's kind of your task list. That's what you're going to shoot for. Now, there's some finishing things that you can do on the backside just to make it look just right. And a lot of that's going to depend upon your personality and how detail-oriented you are. I am detail-oriented, bordering up on anal. And so I do a lot of finishing work because I really want it to look and to feel just right from the front door forward, just because that's one of the values that God has placed in my life. But I do think it's important because, it's the environment that sets the emotional tone. It communicates truth, and it leaves a lasting impression. So I'm going to give myself to that because I think it's important. So again, I've rambled quickly, and that's why we do it by video, so that you can rewind, you can listen to it again, you can make your list based upon it. But again, we're going to brainstorm ideas. And the idea is we want them to be immersive, we want them to be interactive, we want them to be colorful, we want to figure out how to involve leaders and volunteers as characters, but we want to come up with all kinds of ideas built around our theme. Brainstorm, brainstorm, brainstorm. A good idea, if you settle on it, could be the thing that keeps you from a great idea. So you're going to brainstorm. Just think more ideas, more ideas, more ideas. But eventually, you got to stop brainstorming, and then you've got to refine. You've got to pick the ideas that are the best ideas, but also the ones that are in your budget and that you can pull off with the skill set and the man hours that are available to you. Because again, at the most, you have 1 week, less than a week actually, to pull off a set change. And so again, you want to refine them now based upon the quality of the ideas, but also the practicality of the idea. Can it actually happen? Can you pull it off? And then when it comes to implementation, one thing that I forgot to mention is buy or borrow. I mean, to pull things off, to make your environments, you got to buy, borrow, or build. There we go. Buy, borrow, or build. Good B words. You got to buy, borrow, or build everything that you need. And so you want to start doing that as soon as possible, so you have everything collected and amassed, because then you're going to sketch the environment so everybody kind of knows what it's going to look like, whether it be through pictures or whether it be through diagrams, whatever it is, you're going to kind of make sure that folks know what it's going to look like. And then master task list. What's it going to take to clear the previous environment, to get back to a blank slate, and then what's it going to take to build up the new environment so that now all of a sudden you've created an immersive environment. In the next few weeks, it's going to be taking kid life and making it Hollywood. And I'm sure you guys are going to come up with some great ideas. So here's the deal. If possible, as soon as you watch this video, if you can bring pictures, and if you just bring them on your phone or whatever, you can email to me and we can print them here at the church. But if you will take pictures of your current environment, so that as we're dreaming and thinking about the next set change for you guys, they will have pictures that we can draw on, that we can dream over, that we can make those sketches that we're talking about. So again, because the goal when we're hanging out this Saturday is that we actually create a full-fledged plan for every environment who's at the thing. So, Cabot, Heber, Hot Springs, Little Rock, Conway. So everybody who's there, you're going to walk away with a full-fledged set plan for the upcoming series, so that you can then start involving people. First, you're going to run it by your Kid Life pastor. Your Kid Life pastor may say, great, go with it. Your Kid Life pastor may say, well, let's refine it. Trust their leadership. But at the same time, a good friend of mine, Ben Watson at the Conway campus, said this to me. He said, it's easier to edit than it is to create. And so if you show some initiative and show some ideas, then they can always edit your ideas. But it's going to make their job easier, because at least they have a list of ideas that they can go with. So again, man, I love spending time with you guys. I love getting to know you, hearing your ideas, and also just dreaming of what's going to be possible in and through your lives in the coming years. So we'll see you this Saturday. Take some pictures of your environments, bring them with you.